What would you do if a dying alien mother, her body trembling from cosmic radiation poisoning, crawled to your doorstep in the dead of space? When her three fragile younglings clung to her fattening warmth, and her last words were a desperate plea in broken human language. Please, keep them warm. Humans are only ones who can. This is the story of a lonely salvage operator working the asteroid belt who thought he'd seen everything the universe could throw at him. He was wrong. When he discovered the wreckage of an unknown alien vessel drifting through the void, he expected valuable tech and rare materials. Instead, he found a family on the brink of extinction and a truth about humanity that would shake the foundations of everything he thought he knew about our place in the cosmos. Sometimes the most important discoveries aren't made in laboratories or grand expeditions. Sometimes they happen when we're forced to choose between walking away and doing what's right. This is one of those moments when the vastness of space becomes smaller than the size of a human heart, and when our greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons, but something far more fundamental. The universe is cold and unforgiving, but sometimes, just sometimes, it sends us exactly what we need to remember had been alone in the black for 3 months when he found the wreckage. His salvage ship, the Lucky Strike, drifted through the asteroid field like a metal whale hunting for scraps. The universe had a way of making even the most hardened spacers feel small, but had grown comfortable with the silence. After his divorce, after losing his job at the Luna Mining Consortium, solitude felt like an old friend. The debris field appeared on his sensors just after 800 hours ship time. At first glance, it looked like another corporate hauler that had miscalculated a trajectory. Insurance companies paid good money for flight recorders and cargo manifests, adjusted his course, coffee growing cold in his cup as he studied the readings. But something was wrong. The metal signatures didn't match any known human alloy. The ship's fragments scattered across several kilometers, but the pattern was too organic, too flowing. Human ships were built with straight lines and right angles. This looked like it had been grown rather than constructed. Well, hell, muttered, running a hand through his graying beard. In 20 years of salvage work, he'd never seen anything like it. He activated the long-range scanner array, sweeping the debris field for any signs of valuable materials. Rare earth elements lit up his display like a Christmas tree. Whatever this thing was, it was worth a fortune. The lucky strike maneuvered carefully through the field, had learned the hard way that space debris could punch through hull plating like bullets through paper. His ship wasn't much to look at, a converted mining vessel with more patches than original hull. But she was sturdy and reliable. In his line of work, those qualities mattered more than speed or comfort. As he moved deeper into the debris field, noticed something that made his blood run cold. The fragments weren't random. They formed a rough sphere as if something had exploded outward from a central point. But the damage patterns were wrong for an explosion. The metal looked melted, twisted by incredible heat. Whatever had done this was beyond human technology. His proximity alarms chimed as the lucky strike approached a larger fragment, activated the external cameras and gasped. The piece was clearly part of a ship's hull, but it was seamless, flowing like liquid mercury frozen in time. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a faint blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, first contact. The possibility had always existed, of course. Scientists talked about it in academic papers and government officials it in press conferences. But here it was, floating in the void of space, real as the coffee stain on his uniform. Hesitated. Protocol said he should report the find to Earth Central Command immediately. But Protocol also said a lot of things, and Earth Central had a way of making people disappear when inconvenient discoveries were made. He'd heard the rumors about the ghost sites in the Outer Rim, places where salvage crews had vanished without a trace. No, he decided. He'd investigate first, report later. If there was something here worth hiding, he wanted to know what it was before the government black bags showed up. The lucky strike's manipulator arms extended, carefully grasping the alien hull fragment, guided it into his cargo bay, sealing the atmospheric locks behind it. The counter clicked sporadically. Radiation, but not enough to be immediately dangerous. Whatever had destroyed this ship, it had left its mark. As he prepared to examine the fragment more closely, movement on his sensors caught his attention. Something was drifting at the edge of the debris field, too small to be ship wreckage, but too large to be random debris. Adjusted the camera focus and felt his heart skip a beat. It was a pod of some kind, roughly cylindrical, but with the same organic curves as the ship fragments. And it was intact. More importantly, it was transmitting. A weak signal, cycling through frequencies with mathematical precision. Someone or something was alive in there. Stared at the reading for a long moment. Every instinct told him to call for backup, to follow procedure, to let someone else make the big decisions. But the signal was getting weaker. Whatever was in that pod was running out of time. Damn it, he muttered, engaging the maneuvering thrusters. The Lucky Strike moved toward the pod with practiced precision. Had pulled hundreds of objects from space over the years, from valuable cargo containers to the occasional unlucky spacer who'd lost life support. This was just another rescue operation. At least that's what he told himself. The pod was smaller than he'd thought, maybe 3 meters long and half that wide. Its surface was the same flowing metal as the ship fragments, but where they were torn and melted, this was perfect, unmarked. As the Lucky Strike's manipulator arms closed around it, noticed something that made him pause. There were windows, transparent sections in the pod's hull, and through them he could see movement. The cargo bay pressurized with a hiss as sealed the outer doors. He donned his environmental suit, not taking any chances with alien pathogens or atmospheric contamination. The pod sat in the center of the bay, its surface shimmering with that same blue light he'd seen on the ship fragments. As approached, the light pulsed faster, almost urgently. The windows were clearer now, and what he saw inside made him stop in his tracks. A face looked back at him, unmistakably intelligent, unmistakably afraid. It was humanoid but wrong somehow, with features that were almost familiar but not quite human. Large eyes, pale skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light, and expressions that spoke of desperation and hope in equal measure. But it wasn't alone. Behind the first face could see others, smaller ones, children he realized, an alien family trapped in a failing pod in the middle of nowhere. The main figure pressed its hands against the window and could see its mouth moving. No sound penetrated the pod's hull, but the meaning was clear. Help, please. The universal language of desperation. Activated his suit's external speakers. Can you hear me? He asked, feeling foolish. Even if they could understand human speech, they probably couldn't hear him through the pod's hull. But the alien's reaction suggested otherwise. Its eyes widened, and it nodded vigorously, pressing its face to the window. It spoke, and while couldn't hear the words, he could see the urgency in its expression. The environmental readings on the pod were grim. Atmosphere was failing, power levels critical. Whatever life support system the pod had was on its last legs. If was going to do something, he had to do it fast. He examined the pod's surface, looking for any kind of access panel or emergency release. The alien technology was completely foreign. No recognizable interfaces or controls. But as his gloved hands passed over the hull, sections began to glow brighter, responding to his touch. The alien inside saw what he was doing and became more animated, pressing both hands against the window and nodding. It pointed to a specific section of the hull where the blue glow was, placed his palm against it, and the entire pod shuddered. A seam appeared in the hull, spreading outward from where he touched. The pod was opening, releasing its contents into the cargo bay. Stepped back, hand moving instinctively to the emergency atmospheric controls. If the aliens carried some kind of plague or toxic atmosphere, he could seal the bay and vent it to space. The pod split open like a flower, its halves retracting smoothly. A wave of warm, humid air washed over, carrying with it the scent of something floral and sweet. Not dangerous, just alien. The atmospheric sensors on his suit registered elevated levels of oxygen and nitrogen, but nothing toxic. The alien climbed out of the pod slowly, favoring its left side. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, with proportions that were almost human but stretched somehow. Its skin had a pearlescent quality that caught the cargo bay lights, and its eyes were larger than any human's, dark and deep. It wore clothing that seemed to be made of the same material as the ship, flowing and seamless. But as it stood, could see that it was injured. Burn marks covered one side of its body, and its movements were careful, pained. Radiation sickness, he realized. Whatever had destroyed the ship had exposed this being to massive doses of cosmic radiation. The alien looked at for a long moment, then spoke. The words were musical, flowing like water over stones, but completely incomprehensible. Spread his hands, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, I don't understand," he said through his suit speakers. The alien paused, then tilted its head in a gesture that seemed oddly human. When it spoke again, the words were different, halting and uncertain, but recognizable. "Yeah, man," it said, the word distorted by an alien vocal structure but unmistakable. Then nodded slowly. "Yes, human, I'm human." The alien's eyes widened, and it took a step forward, swaying slightly. "Human," it repeated, then said something else in its musical language before switching back to broken English. "Help, please, children." It gestured back to the pod, where could now see three smaller figures huddled together. They were clearly juveniles, maybe adolescents by their size, but their proportions were more human-like than their parent. They watched with the same large, dark eyes, but where the adult showed desperation, they showed simple curiosity. "They're your kids?" asked, even though the answer was obvious. The alien nodded. My young ones." It struggled with the words, but the meaning was clear. "Please keep warm. Ship is gone. Only you, only human can." The alien swayed again, more pronounced this time, and realized how serious its condition was. Radiation poisoning was a death sentence without immediate medical attention, and the Lucky Strike's medical bay was designed for humans, not aliens. "Okay," said, making the decision without really thinking about it. "Okay, let's get you somewhere more comfortable. Can you walk?" The alien tried to take another step and collapsed. Caught it, surprised by how light it was despite its height. The skin was warm to the touch, even through his gloves, and he could feel a tremor running through its body. "Kids," called to the three juveniles, gesturing for them to follow. "Come on, let's get your parents some help." They emerged from the pods slowly, staying close together. Unlike their parent, they seemed healthy, though clearly scared. The largest one, maybe equivalent to a human teenager, stepped forward and spoke in the same musical language. The adult alien replied weakly, then looked at. They ask if you are our friend. I tell them, yes, human is friend." They felt something twist in his chest. These beings had lost everything, their ship destroyed, their parent dying, and they were asking if he was a friend, as if he had a choice. "Yeah," he said softly, "I'm a friend." He helped the alien to the cargo bay's emergency medical station, a basic setup designed for treating injuries during salvage operations. It wasn't much. but it had beds and basic life support equipment. The adult alien collapsed onto one of the beds, breathing heavily. The three juveniles clustered around their parent, speaking in worried tones. Stepped back, giving them space while he tried to process what had just happened. First contact with an alien species, and it was a medical emergency involving children. His communicator crackled with static, then cleared. Lucky Strike, this is Ceres Station Traffic Control. Please respond. They froze. He'd forgotten about the automatic distress beacon that activated when his cargo bay sensors detected life forms in distress. Ceres Station was the nearest human outpost, about 6 hours away at maximum burn. If they dispatched a rescue ship, they'd find the aliens. He looked at the small family huddled around the medical bed. The adult alien's eyes found his and saw something there that made his decision for him. Trust. Despite everything, despite being completely at his mercy, this being trusted him. Activated his communicator. Ceres Station, this is Lucky Strike. False alarm on the distress beacon. Equipment malfunction. Continuing normal operations. Acknowledged, Lucky Strike. Do you require technical assistance? The negative, Ceres Station. Everything under control here. He closed the channel and looked back at the aliens. The adult was watching him, and despite the language barrier, could tell it had understood what just happened. He had chosen them over protocol, over the safe, easy option. Thank you, the alien whispered in English, then said something in its own language to its children. They looked at with what could only be gratitude. Pulled off his helmet, breathing the alien-scented air for the first time. It was clean, warmer than ship's standard atmosphere with that strange floral undertone. Not unpleasant, just different. "Well, what's your name?" he asked. The alien considered this for a moment, then spoke a series of musical notes that could never hope to reproduce. Seeing his confusion, it tried again. "You may call me," sings in starlight. It is close enough. Sings in starlight, repeated. I'm. Sings in starlight said carefully. Good name, strong name. And your kids? Sings in starlight spoke to the juveniles who responded with their own musical phrases. They choose human names. For you, this one, she indicated the largest, wishes to be David, this one Sarah, the smallest, wishes to be hope. Looked at the three young aliens who had just taken human names for his benefit. David, who stood protectively in front of his siblings. Sarah, who watched everything with intense curiosity. And Hope, the smallest, who was barely more than a child and looked at like he might disappear at any moment. Good names, said, his voice rougher than he'd intended. All good names. Sings in starlight closed her eyes, exhaustion overtaking her. She said softly, I am dying, the burning light. It has taken root in my body, but my children, they are strong. They can survive if they are kept warm. Human warmth. Only human warmth can help them when I am gone. I felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. What do you mean, human warmth? But Sings in starlight had lost consciousness, her breathing shallow but steady. The three juveniles moved closer to her, their skin beginning to glow with the same blue light had seen on the ship fragments. David looked at and spoke in careful English, each word precisely pronounced. Our people. We need warmth to live. Ship provided warmth. Ship gone now. Mother says, human warmth is special, can keep us alive. I don't understand, said. How is human warmth different? Sarah stepped forward, her voice softer than David's but clearer. Your species generates heat differently, emotional heat, life heat. We can use it, share it. It makes us strong. I stared at them, trying to process what they were telling him. They weren't just asking for shelter or food. They were asking for something fundamentally human, something he wasn't even sure he understood himself. But looking at their faces, at the trust and hope there, realized it didn't matter if he understood. They needed him, and that was enough. Okay, he said finally. We'll figure it out, all of us together. Hope, the smallest one, stepped forward and placed her small hand in his. Her skin was warm, warmer than human normal, and felt something flow between them. Not physical, but real nonetheless. A connection. A sharing of warmth that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with caring. For the first time in months, didn't feel alone in the black. And as the lucky strike continued its drift through the asteroid field, carrying its unusual cargo toward an uncertain future, the universe seemed a little less cold, a little less empty. The 3 days passed in the confined space of the lucky strike, and was learning that caring for alien children was nothing like the parenting manuals suggested. Not that he'd ever read any parenting manuals, but he was pretty sure they didn't cover what to do when your charges glowed blue when they were happy and dimmed when they were sad. The things in starlight drifted in and out of consciousness, her condition deteriorating despite best efforts. The medical bay's equipment was designed for human physiology, useless for treating radiation sickness in an alien metabolism. All he could do was keep her comfortable and hope her body could fight off the effects of whatever cosmic horror had destroyed her ship. The children, however, were adapting with remarkable resilience. David had appointed himself the leader, translating between his siblings, and when the language barrier proved too difficult, Sarah spent her time exploring the ship with careful curiosity, asking questions about everything from the coffee maker to the navigation computer. And Hope rarely left side, seeming to draw comfort from his presence in a way that both touched and worried him. It was during the third night cycle that began to understand what Sings in Starlight had meant about human warmth. He'd been sitting in the cargo bay, working on converting one of the storage compartments into a more comfortable living space for his passengers. The Lucky Strike wasn't designed for families, and 3 growing aliens needed more room than the cramped crew quarters could provide. Hope sat beside him, watching his work with those impossibly large eyes. There she said in her soft, careful English, "Are you lonely?" The question caught him off guard. "Why do you ask?" Hope tilted her head, a gesture he'd noticed all of them made when they were thinking. "Your heat feels sad, empty, like our ship before the bad thing happened." I paused in his work, looking at the young alien. "You can feel my emotions." "Not feel," Hope said, searching for the right words. "Taste, share. Your people have such warmth inside, not just body heat, heart heat, soul heat. It feeds us, makes us strong." It was the most Hope had spoken at once, and found himself fascinated despite his confusion. "And my heat tastes sad." "Very sad," Hope confirmed, "but also kind, protective. That is why Mother chose you, why she said only humans could help us." "I'm not the only human in space, Hope. There are billions of us." Hope shook her head. "Not all humans have the right warmth. Some have cold hearts, empty places. You have a full heart even though it hurts." They set down his tools, giving Hope his full attention. How can you tell all this? My people are. We are empathic. We feel what others feel, share their emotional energy. It is how we survived as a species. We form bonds, communities that share strength and warmth. Hope's expression grew sad. Our ship was one big family, 300 souls all connected. When the burning light came, we felt them all leave. The weight of what she was telling him settled on like a cold hand. This child had experienced the psychic death of 300 family members. No wonder she clung to his warmth. I'm sorry, said, the words feeling inadequate. That must have been terrible. It was, Hope agreed simply. But you are here now, and your warmth is helping us heal. Over the following days, began to notice the changes in himself as much as in his alien guests. The persistent melancholy that had followed him into space, the sense of purposelessness that had driven him to solitary salvage work, was lifting. He found himself whistling while he worked, taking pleasure in small tasks like preparing meals or maintaining the ship's systems. Sarah had taken over the galley, experimenting with human food with the enthusiasm of a master chef. Her people, it turned out, could digest most organic compounds, though they preferred foods with high energy content. She discovered coffee and pronounced it liquid sunshine, drinking cup after cup while chattering about the ship's systems in a mixture of English and her musical native tongue. David had become's unofficial first mate, helping with navigation and maintenance. His understanding of technology was intuitive rather than learned, as if he could sense the purpose and function of complex systems just by touching them. When the Lucky Strike's main engine developed a problem with its plasma injectors, David had located and fixed the issue before even knew there was a malfunction. How did you know? Had asked, watching David's hands dance over the engine controls with impossible precision. It was in pain, David had replied matter-of-factly. The machines have feelings, not like people feelings, but they want to work properly. This one was frustrated, unable to do its job. I helped it remember how. It was during their second week together that the first emergency call came in. A mining ship, the Hercules, had suffered a catastrophic decompression in the asteroid belt. 17 crew members were trapped in a failing section of the ship, and the Lucky Strike was the closest vessel capable of mounting a rescue. I stared at the communication display, torn between duty and the need to protect his passengers. Taking the Lucky Strike into an active rescue situation would expose the aliens to other humans, potentially putting them in danger if word got out about their existence. "We have to help them," Sarah said from behind him. She'd been listening to the emergency broadcast, her expression serious. "It's too dangerous," replied. "If other people find out about you, people are dying," David interrupted, moving to stand beside his sister. "We cannot let people die when we have the power to save them." "Your people might not understand about us," Hope added, taking hand in her small one. "But that does not mean we should not help." Looked at the three young faces, seeing determination and compassion that put his own doubts to shame. "If we do this, you'll have to stay hidden. Other humans might not react well to finding out about you." "We understand," David said. "We will stay in the converted storage bay, but we want to help. Our people believe that all life is connected. To save others is to save ourselves." The rescue operation took 12 hours. Worked alongside the emergency teams, using the Lucky Strike's specialized salvage equipment to cut through the damaged sections of the Hercules. 17 lives were saved, including a family with 2 small children who reminded painfully of his passengers. Throughout the operation, he could feel something different. His reactions were faster, his judgment clearer, his endurance greater than it had ever been. When exhaustion should have slowed him down, he found reserves of energy and focus that seemed to come from nowhere. It wasn't until later, as he helped the last survivor transfer to the rescue ship, that he understood what was happening. Hope appeared at his side, having slipped out of hiding despite his orders. "You felt it," she said softly, her hand finding his again. "I felt what?" The bond. You were drawing on our strength and we on yours. That is what Mother meant about human warmth. Your species can form true empathic bonds with ours, two-way connections that make both stronger." I stared at her. "You're saying we're psychically linked?" "Not psychically," Hope corrected. "Empathically, heart to heart, soul to soul. It is why you feel less lonely now, why we feel safe despite everything we have lost." The implications were staggering. If what Hope was saying was true, then humans and her people were compatible in ways that went far beyond simple cooperation. They could actually strengthen each other, share emotional and psychic energy in a symbiotic relationship. But before could process this fully, alarms began sounding throughout the Lucky Strike. The rescue operation had attracted attention from an unexpected source. A military patrol ship, the UES Vigilant, was requesting permission to board for a routine inspection. I felt his blood turn to ice. Military inspections were never routine, and the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Someone had noticed something unusual about the Lucky Strike's involvement in the rescue operation. Kids, he called, his voice tight with tension. Emergency protocols now. They moved with practiced efficiency, the result of drills had insisted on after taking them aboard. Within minutes, they had disappeared into the modified storage compartment, its entrance sealed and disguised. To any casual inspection, it would look like a standard cargo hold. The Vigilance shuttle docked with a solid thunk and forced himself to remain calm as three figures in military uniforms came aboard. The leader, a stern-faced woman with commander's stripes, introduced herself as Commander Hayes. "Mister," she said, her tone professional but probing, "we've been reviewing the rescue operation data. Some of your ship's performance readings are unusual." "How so?" asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Your reaction times, navigation precision, and technical efficiency all show significant improvement over your previous logged operations. It's as if you had additional crew members assisting you." I kept his expression neutral. Adrenaline can do amazing things in an emergency situation. Commander Hayes nodded, but her eyes remained suspicious. "I'm sure it can. Would you mind if we conducted a brief inspection of your ship? Standard procedure after any major rescue operation." "Of course," said, knowing he had no choice. "Though I should mention I've been experimenting with some new automated systems. Might explain the improved efficiency." The inspection was thorough but not invasive. Commander Hayes and her team checked the ship's logs, scanned for life signs, and examined the cargo holds. His heart pounded every time they passed near the concealed compartment, but the alien's hiding place held firm. It was when they reached Sings and Starlight's location in the medical bay that things became complicated. The alien woman was unconscious, her biosigns heavily masked by the medical equipment had rigged to disguise her presence. To the casual observer, she looked like a human patient in critical condition. "What happened here?" Commander Hayes asked, studying the medical readouts. "Radiation exposure," replied, sticking as close to the truth as possible. "Found her drifting in a damaged escape pod. Couldn't just leave her to die. Her registration." Handed over a identity chip he'd prepared for exactly this situation. Maria Santos, independent prospector. Her ship was destroyed in the same incident that created the debris field I've been working. Commander Hayes examined the chip, then looked more closely at Sings and Starlight's unconscious form. Held his breath, praying that the alien's more obvious non-human features weren't visible under the medical coverings. "She'll need proper medical attention," Commander Hayes said finally. "We can transfer her to our medical bay." "I appreciate the offer," replied carefully, "but moving her right now could be dangerous. The radiation exposure was severe and her condition is still critical." Commander Hayes studied him for a long moment and could see the calculation in her eyes. She knew something was wrong, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what. "Very well," she said finally. "But I'll be filing a report about this rescue. If her condition deteriorates, contact Ceres Station immediately." "Of course." After the military team left, waited a full hour before giving the all-clear signal. The three aliens emerged from their hiding place, moving quietly to avoid detection by any sensors the Vigilant might have left behind. "Well, they suspected something," David observed. But they couldn't prove it," Sarah added. Hope moved to his side, taking his hand. Through their connection, he could feel her worry and gratitude in equal measure. "You protected us again." "We're family now," said the words surprising him with their truth. "That's what family does." The Sings in Starlight stirred in the medical bay, consciousness returning briefly. Her eyes found, and she spoke in her musical language. Hope translated, her voice soft with emotion. She says the bond is complete now. You have chosen us, and we have chosen you. She says, she says you are no longer alone in the black, and neither are we. Looked at the three young aliens who had become his responsibility, his purpose, his family. The universe was vast and cold and empty, full of dangers both known and unknown. But here, in this small space filled with alien warmth and human determination, none of that mattered. They had found each other in the darkness, and they were stronger together than apart. Whatever came next, they would face it as a family. But even as allowed himself to feel hope for the first time in years, he knew their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The military's interest had been piqued, and there would be more questions, more inspections, more opportunities for discovery. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a nagging question remained. What had destroyed Sings and Starlight's ship with such devastating force? And was it still out there hunting? The nightmares began 3 weeks after the military inspection. Would wake in his quarters, heart pounding, sweat beading on his forehead, with the taste of metal and burning ozone in his mouth. Images flashed through his mind, massive dark shapes moving through space, weapons that tore reality itself. And always, always the sound of 300 souls crying out in psychic agony before falling silent. But these weren't his nightmares. They belonged to Sings in Starlight. As her condition worsened, the barriers between her mind and those of her children grew thinner, and through their empathic bond with, he was experiencing fragments of her memories, glimpses of the horror that had befallen her people's ship. "It's getting stronger," Hope whispered during one of their quiet talks in the converted storage bay. The space had become a sanctuary of sorts, decorated with salvaged materials and lit by the gentle blue glow of alien bioluminescence. Mother's pain is bleeding through. Soon we will all share her memories of that day. I sat beside her on one of the improvised beds, feeling the warmth of the empathic connection that had become as natural as breathing. Over the past month, the bond had deepened and expanded, creating a network of shared emotions and experiences between him and all three children. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Tell me about the ship," he said gently. "Your real home." Hope's eyes grew distant, accessing memories that could feel echoing at the edges of his consciousness. "The harmony of voices," she said. "A living ship grown over 3 centuries from the first seed pod. Our entire community lived within its embrace. Scientists, artists, teachers, families. We were explorers, seekers of knowledge and beauty. A living ship. Yes, David interjected, joining the conversation from where he'd been tinkering with a piece of human technology. Our ships are not built, they are grown. Organic technology that bonds with its inhabitants, sharing life force and consciousness. The harmony was ancient, wise, beautiful. It sang to us as we traveled between stars. Sarah looked up from her drawing tablet where she'd been sketching images of their lost home. It was paradise. Can you understand? 300 souls living in perfect harmony, sharing joy and sorrow, knowledge and dreams. No loneliness, no isolation, no fear, just connection, pure and eternal. They felt their grief like a physical weight, transmitted through the empathic bond they shared. But beneath the sorrow, he sensed something else, fear. A terror so profound that even the memory of it made his hands tremble. What found you? He asked quietly. The three aliens exchanged glances, communicating in their musical language for several minutes before Hope answered. The harvesters, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ancient machines older than civilization, older than most star systems. They consume life itself, feeding on the psychic energy of sapient beings. We thought they were legend, David added, his usual confidence shaken. Stories told to frighten children, myths from the dark times before our people learned to sing in harmony. But the real journey was just beginning. Who we truly are